All right, we're here at our final discussion circle about evaluations.
Yay.
And we've got some questions here. Where does evaluation fit into the scheme of collection development and management?
I think it's quite a bit like about quality control because you're evaluating what goes into your collection. Yeah, you can't censor what's going on in there because, you know, that's kind of the point of a library. You're an information hub. You're supposed to give out a lot of different points of view, but you also have to give out like items, books that is like, you know, of good quality, something that your patrons, your customers can use, whether it's like a good quality book that's not falling apart at the seams, something that's more like or a medical book that's more current with the times, like with medical practices, or like even an audiobook. Because I know some libraries that still use cassettes, they can use CDs, they can use playaways. Again, it depends on your audience, what they use, how they use it, and yada yada.
Yeah, I kind of think of evaluation as kind of like one of the foundations of collection development and management, because as you were saying, you kind of evaluate like what's being used and all that, but you also have to evaluate what needs to come off the shelf and how you're supposed to do that. And he was talking about thinking there's a lot of book banning going on. And so you have to evaluate when that book becomes, challenged. When a book is challenged, you need to have kind of like a reconsideration policy so that you can evaluate whether or not the book needs to be pulled or not, or left alone or moved or whatever. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that we could easily this is the basis for it.
Yeah, and I feel like if you made that move to either keep that banned book or to toss that banned book, you better be ready with
reason why.
Yes, exactly, a reason why. I can't think.
And honestly, if you were having a banned book, I wouldn't just have like your librarian being the only one to do it. I would like set up a committee, maybe of your board members, or include parent or whatever, and so that you don't just have the librarian's opinion.
Yeah.
You also want to include people who are learned and know like why a book would be added to a collection, so they can see whether or not Gay Sex for Teens fits with what it is a fitting book to have in the teen room or whatever.
Yeah, I work in a school, obviously, and we have a evaluation form that whoever wants to challenge a book needs to fill out, and it includes lots of questions, but then after that it does go to like the librarian and then the principal, and then they keep taking it steps further until they've developed a committee to review each individual book.
Perfect. That's awesome.
And then the committee would include community members, board members, principal, librarian, other teachers and buildings and whatever, so that they get a really fair evaluation of the book, so that it's, exactly, not just on one person and their opinion and whatever they think. So
yeah. We have administrators in other states that are just walking in and pulling books off shelves and totally ignoring that reconsideration policy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very alarming. It's like, well, why do we even have policy if you're not going to follow it?
Right.
And why are you getting paid?
Feels like a formality that they just wave around and then ignore when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm. All right, our next question says, what are some of the criteria that are most used to add or remove material from a collection? Are there others we should be using, and what might those be?
Criteria, I would say bad or misleading information or old information.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the top ones. Like, we don't need books from the 1950s, as he was saying, in our school libraries. And I have been to more than my fair share of weedings where we've pulled books from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s from school libraries that were in nonfiction. It's like not just space, like Pluto is still a planet. Well, you have to have books that say, well, no, Pluto is not a planet anymore, but it was.
It will always be a planet.
I agree.
The endangered species list changes constantly. So you don't want books from the 1980s about what species are endangered. You also don't want books from the 1980s about the Middle East because quite a bit has changed since.
Yeah.
That's why weeding's so important. It's like we have to constantly update and evaluate and manage our collections so that correct.
Yeah, and going back to your endangered species example, I mean, there are some animals that some people thought were extinct that are still alive and thriving, like in the ocean and like deeper in the forest that people thought were gone, but they're still there. So having some additional information about those animals and how to like preserve them and keep them going is going to be invaluable information that we would need to keep in libraries as well.
Other criteria that we should be using, how often it's checked out, maybe how often it's used. Well, so if your shelves are packed full, then are people seeing those books, those newer books that have never been checked out? I mean, condition is a great thing to weed by, but you also need to go look at what is actually actively circulating. Is it because people can't see it because the shelves are packed, or is it because that no one's interested in it?
Yeah, I know that in my library that there is like a specific section that is only for new books, whether they're like for younger readers, adults, for the young adults, the teenagers. And I think that kind of helps with the circulation so that when it comes time to put those new books into the regular section, I think that's when we can start reading. So I think that's a practice that might be helpful with that.
That's true, but how long are they on that shelf?
Point taken.
Because if you have it at my public library, the new fiction books are on the shelf for 3 months and the nonfiction are on for 6 months. And then after that, they go into the shelf. And you're going to have a checkout for 2 to 4 weeks for each item. And so for a good almost third of that, they will be checked out and not on that shelf. And so once they go back to like when they come in and they get moved off that new shelf, it's still, you have to see if they're seen or not.
Yeah.
But no, like I love the new shelf. It's a great place to go and look and browse, but like they don't stay there forever, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's at least an idea, not a perfect system, but it's an idea.
No, it's
yeah.
to show off what you've just purchased. But again, yeah, they're not going to be there forever, which is good. But yeah,
I think that also helps with like, or you can highlight different books. They might not be new books, but you can put them on display on the little book easels too. Like if there is hopefully extra space on the shelves or on top of a shelf, you know, so that people are seeing books that haven't been used for a while. And so if you see one that you're like, oh, this is a good book, how come it hasn't circulated in the last 3 months? You know, you could
Almost
try
like
putting it out there and see if that's actually something that people wanted to read, or if it was just lost or they couldn't find it, or if it's truly just not used by your patrons.
Like a lost artifact collection.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we have when I worked at the public library, we had this wonderful like giant case file of different advertisements or displays. And one of them we got from the internet was cupcakes and stud muffins. And so they would put baking books with romance books.
Okay.
And it's just fun to see what you can do to put those books out there again for displays. Displays are always fun. I love them.
Me too.
Any
other criteria we think would be good for adding or removing material? I guess we didn't talk much about adding material. What do you guys think would be good criteria for adding?
it would be the demand,
Yeah, patron demand.
how new it is.
I think some of it you can turn to social media and you can see kind of what's trending, what's going on. Like if you go on to like say Twitter and you can go on to like a Barnes and Noble Twitter or Scholastic and you can see like the various connecting tweets that can go with that. You can see like what's circulating, what's most popular, what keeps popping up. I mean, that's might be something that that could be used, can be looked at. And
Yeah.
I mean, and I use Tumblr. I know there's a lot of opinions on that, but sometimes I use Tumblr for like book recommendations, like see what some of what some reg, what some other people are looking at, what I could look at, what's been underrated, so to speak, and I can give it a look. It might be something interesting to put in. Yeah, I mean, just basically going to social media and see kind of what's going on.
Um,
I think that vendors are pretty good about that too. I just helped my current librarian put in a book order, and our vendor that we use is through Capstone, and she was able to pull lists of books that are more popular or that people are buying more of, or that they're sending back reviews like, hey, I didn't know about this book before, but my kids really love it. You know, thanks for that. And then she can add those titles to a different list. And so that's what we ordered a lot of this time around, was just books that are seeming to be popular at other places and kind of giving our kids some different books from maybe what they are always used to getting, which is just like Dog Man and Captain Underpants.
Pilky.
Trying to expand our horizons, be like, other kids your age love these books. You should love them too.
Please, I promise there's more good books out there. Don't restrict yourself to this.
Right.
And I can see why some librarians checked out those Wimpy Kid books just so that they get out of the collection. Or stories.
Yeah.
I think social media could definitely be a benefit, but social media isn't always going to show your entire community. So like I do think watching your circulation stats and what actually checks out, like if you have reports that you can run, like, oh, juvenile fiction is doing really good, these are the books that have circulated most, okay, what genre can I add from here, or what's new in this genre. Also, like working with a consortium, we generally tend to do a lot of in-house interlibrary loan. So like we have 50 some odd public libraries. And so we do a lot of shipping back and forth. So we don't necessarily need to buy like the newest, greatest. Like we don't need to buy the newest James Patterson for adults because there's already like 20 copies in the system already. So we can save that money and buy something else. And that's where you can look at more diverse titles that are coming out and things like that. I think it should match your community's diversity and demographics just a little bit, or a lot of it. But that's how I would do it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if it doesn't appeal to the patrons, I mean, why would they bother?
Right.
Our next one is, what is the difference between evaluation and weeding, or is there one? Is there a difference, or if there is, what is the difference?
I think evaluation is something that can come before and after the process of weeding. Like, okay, does this look good? Is this relevant? Keep it, yes or no. Why do we keep it? Or why do we throw it? I think evaluation is basically just kind of like asking yourself the question of to do or not to do, to be or not to be. I'm sorry, I had to. And weeding is like the act of acting on that evaluation, like whether or not you do or not. That's my basic idea of it.
Yeah, it's the idea versus the manifestation. I agree with that. I think evaluation is a step in weeding. It's not the same thing, because weeding is you evaluate while you weed, and you can weed while you are evaluating. I mean, they are two different things, but they go hand in hand, I think.
They're connected.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you just mindlessly weed, I mean, you could take out something that could really be important. And
Well, if you're weeding by condition, then
then, yeah.
generally you're looking, and people are generally trained in weeding before they're allowed to pull books. Well, okay, I say that in my workplace, we're generally trained before we're allowed to pull books. And we look at its use historically, like how often has it been checked out? Is it one of those steadfast books that people use to teach a lot with? Things like that. And then we take that information, like, is it a teaching tool? Things like that. If it is, and it's in really bad condition, we put it on a list for the teacher or librarian to buy again.
Yeah. Like one of those books that stand the test of time. We just need to put in better.
Like the core, like that video he showed us, like they're looking to get their core collections set up correctly.
Yeah.
And they're talking with the teachers about what books they use for their classes. It's kind of making sure like that, but like, oh, this copy is so torn up that we need to get a new copy. So we'll toss this one and put it on our list to rebuy.
I agree.
Yep.
All right, what are some of the problems or difficulties of collection evaluation, and what can be done to avoid them?
I could see what you said earlier, Janelle, is like thoughtlessly weeding without doing evaluation.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is definitely something that I've seen happen and can happen. Honestly, I've seen a library get rid of all of their historical documents because of that. They didn't know what they had. And so they just tossed it. And to avoid that, it would be definitely to do an evaluation beforehand or actually know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Before you do it.
Because I think there's like a danger in weeding way too much to the point of things being obsolete or barren. And then there's a danger of not doing it all because you're too afraid of losing something that's potentially important, or you just don't have the time or the budget or whatever else excuse there is out there. So it's like you have to find like some kind of medium, like something that like a tool that you can use to like on one hand like keep you in check to make sure that you do it.
Like the crew method.
Yeah.
And like that's why your weeding policy or collection policy, that's why it's important.
Yeah. And you need to talk with your teammates about it. You can't just like pull an administrator move and just toss things out just because you think it's okay. It's like a team effort, really.
Honestly, yes.
That's like one of the issues that I'm facing as we come up to summer here, is that I'm moving over to librarian, but the library hasn't been properly weeded probably in 15 years. And it's just like there's 40,000 books and I have one summer to like get it done. And it's very overwhelming, but I know that there are books in there from the 50s, 60s, 70s, fiction and nonfiction. And it's like, who has the kind of time for that? And so I'm concerned for myself that I don't want to end up mindlessly weeding books. But at the same time, it's like there's no room in there. Like the stacks are full. There's books every which way. There's no room for new books. We just placed a new book order, but it's not like we weeded 100 books to replace the 100 that are coming in. It's just like, I don't want to fall into that danger of doing it mindlessly, but I'm also alone and have no time necessarily to like get that done, in addition to processing all the new books and cleaning up the library in general, much like just like weeding actual titles. So
And
It's a
that's
lot.
hard, especially if you don't, your school, is your school district part of any regional library system?
I don't know that answer.
I would find out because depending on which, are you in Kansas?
Yeah. I would imagine that we are a part of the Northeast Kansas library system, probably.
I would find that out and see if they could come in and do weeding. I can't speak for them, but I'm part of the Central Kansas library system and we go out and do schools all the time.
And you said that there are 40,000 books in your library.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, I mean, they can't expect one person to do all that.
Oh, they do, and more, and they do it, and they
Insane.
do it. Not librarians; they make paras do it, because they don't understand the value of a librarian. And I am getting off topic.
I mean, this could be very important. This can be pertinent to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anywho,
Check out and see if you're part of the consortium and if they can come out and do a weeding for you. If not, then I hope they can. I don't know.
That's a good thing to look into. I didn't even know that that was a tool that was available. Like I've heard them talk about the Northeast Kansas library system, so I would go ahead and imagine that we are part of that. But as far as them like doing things for us, I've never heard of them doing that. So I will definitely look into it.
Yeah, my system is very hands-on. I will say that we're kind of the weird ones of the group because we go out so often and we're consultant heavy. But yeah, yours might not be. I'm not sure.
We'll find out. Thank you for that tip. I wrote it down and I will definitely do that.
Okay.
All right, our next question is there any relation between marketing and evaluation? And if so, what is it? Marketing and evaluation, the relationship between. I think you could have, after you've like evaluated some books and you found some that you forgot you had or aren't circulating as much, or maybe are circulating a good amount, but you want to book talk them, I think that could be good. I don't necessarily know, like in this instance, what they're talking about for marketing.
I think it goes back to that. If you don't think they're doing good because of certain reasons, you can pull them out, and the display idea that we had earlier and what you just said.
Hey, see about talking them up a bit. Try to like generate some interest. See if it could be like something that you can use. Like if there's like a book that you're not quite sure should be weeded, or should be kept, it just has potential. You can use like a marketing technique, so to speak, to advertise it a little bit to see whether it holds any water.
So yeah, marketing would be part of evaluation.
And if it doesn't, well, then now you know what to do with it.
Right.
Especially if you had like a certain section in your collection, like maybe you have a whole bunch of, I don't know, space books that aren't seeming to circulate. You could make some kind of like a whole display just for space books, or some kind of infographic, or whatever special Facebook post or something highlighting some of those titles. Have several of them rather than just a couple here and there.
Yeah, make it like a little fun event kind of thing.
We have a bunch of homeschoolers in our area. And so we have a giant parents as teachers category. And so we actually market that out to those groups specifically, like in email blasts and things like that. So yeah, that's
a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Where might evaluation fit into the current discussions on the threats to freedom of collection development?
I think we covered that in our first question.
I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, don't overweed, don't underweed, do it, but do it with the system. Talk with the team about it. Don't try to censor anything with personal opinions, because the point of the library is to give information, different viewpoints, different values, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and we have to think about misleading information and stuff like that. Also look at your policy. Does your policy say that you will add anything and everything to your collection Or does your policy say that you will input factual information in your nonfiction or things like that? Do you put in conjecture? Do you put in things that are stuff like that?
And then if anyone asks you why you're taking a book out of the library, or you're keeping it, you need to find like some kind of argument or backup statement to back
Your
up
policy.
your policy, like going to the policy, whether or not it goes with it.
Yeah.
Get ready to basically fight, so to speak, or talk about it.
Yeah. And with the whole book banning thing, the evaluation would be the step where you evaluate the book, whether or not it fits your policy on collection development and for your community and all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah, all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. That's that. Those are all the questions. I don't see any follow-ups on the bottom here. So it's about a 30-minute discussion. That's probably good, right?
Yeah, we've had anywhere between 30. They've generally been about 30 minutes, right?
I would say on average, yeah.
All right. Well, any other thoughts about evaluations or any other collection development thoughts?
I really like this class. That was about it. It's a good class.
It's definitely very interesting and something I'll think about for future career considerations, like being part of the collection development management system.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was one of the more useful classes that I've taken so far. I mean, I'm done now, but it was one of my favorite classes and the most beneficial for me, at least. You know, like some of them, like the research class and stuff, that was just is not my jam, not beneficial for me. I don't plan to continue on to become some kind of
and I know that this has a real world application, because ever since I started working for the libraries, we talked about this quite a bit. So it's like, I know I will use this. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
All right. I'm going to stop the recording.